Hello, my fellow villains, it's I, Evil Murloc here. Today we'll be doing an analysis on the greatest poem I have ever read. And perhaps not even read, but written. What? That is right. It's my poem, and I will be analyzing every single line and explaining every decision I made. So, Strange Knight's Legend by Evil Murloc. Let's get right into it, right? Right? Thinkers and wise men shadow his sight. This is a pretty subtle. Ooh, shadow his sight. What does that mean? Well, he seeks liars, brutes, and those not too bright, right? And then what he does, he either makes them into thinkers and wise men, right? They shadow his sight. They appear where he was sawn, where he was seen, right? They appear where he was seen. But it can also be interpreted in the way that they just follow his sightings, right? So they both follow him, but they also appear where he was seen. It's pretty great line, I think. On his hip a sword, his back a weapon, in case his students fail to learn his lesson, because he's teaching them reason, right? If you there's a dramatic reading on my channel, so you can listen to the poem if you want. In case his pen fails to right their wrongs, this is just a little pun because right their wrongs, the pen rights their wrongs, but it rights their wrongs. It's just a classic. He'd rather spill ink than blood, but so it goes. This just means, he prefers talking things out rather than committing violence, but sometimes violence is necessary in order to do good. Now, in this paragraph, uh, the knight arrives into the city, goes into the inn, and gets interrupted by the drunk. Well, I want to first explain this line, the first line, because this one is pretty subtle, or rather pretty unintuitive. A city drawn by a mountain's crest. Now, what does this actually mean? Imagine the knight walking up a mountain, right? And as he walks up, behind the mountain is the city, the he will see how the mountain's crest drops down, and he sees more behind the mountain until he starts seeing the city, right? So the city is drawn by the crest of the mountain. As the crest of the mountain gives away, it reveals the city. Pretty cool line, I think. And yeah, that's what this actually means, because some people didn't get it. It's a pretty subtle line. Now a host to this strange new guest, as he enters an inn seeking rest, a wild drunk interrupts his endless quest. Come strolling in, dressed in all it, you think you're better than me, we'll see about it. A metallic sound, like a bell rang, right? The drunk hits the knight on his head. Wow, wow, wow. But because it's armor, it just, deflects him. Then the knight puts a hand on the drunk's shoulder. Boom. And then he gives him this wisdom. Don't judge others for their fashion sense. Better to observe how they fashion sense. So the first line is pretty obvious, self-explanatory. It's just, don't judge books by their cover. By their cover. But the second line is a little bit more interesting. Better to observe how they fashion sense. Sense, as in reason, as in your arguments, and fashion, like dress up, how they present it. So what is this? The second line says is better to observe how they dress up their reasoning, how they present their reasoning, right? So if somebody is making arguments and arguments don't make sense, but they're dressing them up like they do, you know, logical fallacies and such, then that is what you should actually be judging people by, and not their fashion sense, but how they fashion their sense. It's a pretty clever line, if I do say so myself. The drunk enlightened by words also clear, now fervent with wisdom rather than beer. Come dawn, he takes a brush through the city, right? The night takes a brush because there's a little bit of a through line of him being like ink, being like the pen, pen of reason. Uh, so that's why he takes a brush through the city, because it fits the narrative. He finds a colorless artist, a blacksmithy, starving butcher and baker, student, unwitty, crying children, and their lost kitty. This just shows. I was kind of having fun with these lines, but they are meant to show how desolate the city is, that it's in trouble, that people are suffering. And this last line in particular is meant to show that the kind-heartedness of the heart, because he finds the crying children, but also their lost kitty, because he goes looking for it and finds it to help the crying children. Then upon his box, a monger of fear, talking of ends horrid and near, drips and flows for a better hear, close enough to speak ear to ear. He again drips and flows like ink flows. The through line with him being like ink, taking a brush through the city, and he looks like spilled ink against the light. It's all connected. It's all connected. Blah blah. Can you prove these things to me? Blah blah blah. He says, without your eyes, I cannot agree. Without living through your subjective reality, I cannot agree with what you are saying. In order for me to believe what you're saying to me, you have to prove it to me through objective means, through evidence, through science, repeatable evidence, regardless of ties. This last part, regardless of ties, basically means regardless of personal ties, regardless of biases which you may have, ties, personal ties to the real world. So present me evidence which does not have any personal bias, and then I will be convinced. Now that he knows how to properly analyze, he might actually end up saving some lives. Uh, I mean, that's just common sense. It's just every time you have these doomsayers, I'm thinking, if you actually believed that the end of the world is coming, you should probably find evidence of the fact that they are coming so you can convince more people and double check your belief that the world is actually ending. But nobody ever does that, which means uh, nobody, well, they do convince people, but the world never ends. So they kind of wasted their time and didn't do anything useful. So if you want to do good, then do science. He continues his trickle once again. He trickles down like economics. Just kidding. Like ink. He trickles like ink. Mingles and meets a miller lacking in wheat. Barber with hair. Swindler who can't cheat. Engineer without gin. Sweet without a treat. Once again, just having fun with these lines. It's kind of funny. Uh, barber with hair, which is not even bad, but it's kind of funny because it implies if you cannot cut your own hair that you're a bad briber. Uh, barber, engineer without gin. I just take the middle part gin, but it's also like alcohol. So like he likes part of him. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Uh, Here it continues. Mouse without a cheese, hero without his feet. Broker that can fix is pretty funny because it implies that the broker's job is to break things, but the world is so messed up, he ends up fixing things instead. So, yeah, even though broker is somebody who is a middleman, but like I imply that he breaks things instead. A dead man with a heartbeat. This was a funny line. It was one of the first lines I actually came up with, but uh, yeah, I had a few variations on this, and I was not sure which one was going to be funnier. I had a living man a living man without a heartbeat, uh, a corpse with a heartbeat. You know, either one works. The living man without a heartbeat is like a little bit morbid. It implies like even though the person is dead, even death cannot like claim them. Uh, but the inverse is also kind of funny. Like somebody dies, but they cannot afford to like remove their heartbeat or something. It's a bit convoluted, but I think it's at least funny. A liked tax collector, a bed without a sheet, a fish without a river, a chair without a seat, kind of standard inversions, things you would not expect, things which would exist in a broken city. And many a beggar that hope for his pity, but he's just a man and he's a bit greedy, won't spare a coin but marches on quickly to the town hall of this struggling city. Right? This is meant to show both the flaws of the knight, but also his compassion. Like he cares for the beggars, which is why he goes to the town hall to help solve the underlying problems in the city. But he's not gonna spend his own money on them because he's greedy. He likes his money. He likes his money. Uh, he doesn't wanna just throw out coins. He's looking for more systematic, cooperative, collective solutions. So he goes to the struggling city, to the town hall, right? That's gonna be important later. At his behest, he is let in. Within a man, round, wide grin, bald head, mustache as thin, on each finger a golden rim. Golden rim, that's like rings. He has golden rings. I could have later I realized I could have literally just rhymed ring instead of rim because ring also rhymes with all of these words. But I thought rim looked more poetic. It sounded more poetic, more high upper class, you know. Then the mayor over here starts talking. What desires thou, well endowed guest? His gaze reflects from the deep black depths. We're already painting him as round, fat, upper class, wealthy. He asks the guest, his well endowed guests. He's looking, reflecting from the deep black depths. He's looking at the armor's knight's armor, knight's expensive armor. He's already covering the knight's armor, which is why he's so nice to him because he is going to try to extract as much money from this perceived well-endowed, wealthy knight. But the knight is just here to help. Your people suffer. This problem's breadth. Uh, this may be a little bit of an uncommon word, but just means width, the size of the problem. Solved within 10, give or take steps. Right? He makes plan, which can solve the problem. Easy. Um, I was going to throw the word easy here actually. Solved within 10, easy, give or take steps, but I didn't flow that well, so I did not end up putting it there. His eight shakes, ripples in its wake, because he's fat. These are 10 undertakings I won't undertake. He's not gonna do it. I mean, it is pretty self-explanatory. Why will you not? It's simply our fate. This is a fallacy. He's using a fallacy here. The deterministic fallacy or traditionalist fallacy. One of those, I don't remember the name, but it's a logical fallacy. It's simply, it is because it is fallacy. But I've proven it's not, written on slate. Yeah, because the knight used proof. He knows this is nonsense. He can easily identify it as a fallacy and he calls him out. And this, the villain's swan song, right? A knave raven cannot defy a royal swan. Your arguments won't interrupt my song. Now, originally this had 4 lines only, like any standard poem paragraph. And the first line, the last 3 lines were already done. I had them. I just had to think of the first line. and I was like, song rhymes with everything. Swan song. I heard that swan song is a thing, so I googled what it means. It means like the last monologue, the last thing a villain or a character says, like his last song before his end. So I was like, what if the villain says something? You use the swan song in the rhyme to suggest that, oh, foreshadow the end, which happens 4 lines later. So I had I wrote, now listen to my swan song because I said so. That's why you're wrong. And it was complete garbage. So I just decided to split the swan song into 2 lines because swan also rhymes with everything, kind of. So it wasn't as obvious, and so it sounded better. So he's a royal swan, right? He's wealthy, he's rich, he's upper class. So he calls himself a royal swan, and he calls the knight a raven because he's black. That's not that deep. Your arguments won't interrupt my song. Pretty self-explanatory. Because I said so. This is a add authority, appeal to authority fallacy. That's why you're wrong. His arms swing wild. Inkwells fall along. This is foreshadowed. This line is important. That he knocks over the inkwell. Because I'm good and you evil be gone. This is another fallacy. Ooh, which one was this? The ad hominem fallacy, right? And then the knight says ad hominem. There are 2 lines here to make the line stick out. It's like in the movie where the music stops moment. That's what it's supposed to be invoking. The knight spewed with his pen. He spewed, like he said, with his pen, his mouth, his sword is kind of like a pen. Pen is mightier than sword. He kills him. He slew the deceiver of man because he's like a liar. He lies. Uh, it's pretty self-explanatory. The inkwell kissed its ink upon his hem. This is meant to say, if you remember, the inkwell was knocked over all the way here, 3 lines earlier, but only now did it fall over and spill its ink upon the knight. Uh, this is meant to show that everything here happens like really fast, and the knight just insta kills him. And it's like the movie moment where there's slow motion and the inkwell is stumbling through the air, and he kills him in a single strike before the inkwell even reaches the ground. Super cinematic moment. This is really well written by the author, which is me. Let's continue. Boom. Now, after the drama which happens here, it's quiet, The uh, post post action quiet. The room is quiet, dark solemn. It's a sad tragedy which happened, even though it needed to be done. Then he steps now marred with red and black. The ink was spilled, right, on the floor. He stepped on it. He also stepped into the the mayor's blood. So his steps are marred with red and black. But the red and black also symbolize, like red obviously symbolizes blood. It symbolizes the violence. Black symbolizes the spilled ink, like literally, but also his attempt to solve the problem first diplomatically. So he spilled ink, trying to convince him peacefully, but he also was forced to spill blood, and now his steps are marred with both wasted blood and wasted ink. And then he steps outside the corrupted shack. See, previously we called it a town hall, and now after the revealed corruption, it's called a shack. This is like peak literacy, because what once was dignified after a revelation is now common, rotten. It's revealed to just be a mere shack, lacking power, just a sham. It's pretty poetic. A throng now gathers. A throng is a word which I did not know what means. I wanted to use it earlier, then I googled what it means. Apparently, it means a crowd. And because I remembered that, I just wanted to use it somewhere in the poem, so I'm just using it here. A throng now gathers, questions stack. They're like, "What's going on? The mayor died. What? What will we do now?" and then the knight speaks but once, and written on plaque, which means they respected what he wrote. I mean, respected what he said so much, they wrote it on a plaque. They think he's a good guy. He improved the town. He says, listen and think if you don't know Jack. It's a pretty powerful line, I guess you could say. It's pretty funny because it's not really eloquent. Jack, I just kind of thought of this rhyme relatively early when I was doing it, and I just thought it was funny if I rhymed to Jack with everything, and if he said it. It's pretty obvious, right? If you don't know stuff, learn stuff. This isn't like super deep. Then he sinks back into the night once again. The reason night, the night embodying the fact that he's ink, that the fact that he's like kind of liquidy. It's pretty cool. He sinks back, even though ink doesn't really sink, right? I mean, if you throw it in water, it sinks, but it's not really what you always associate with inkage. It doesn't really sink when you just write with it, but it still fits. It still fits. Ink sinks, and that is why they call him Reasonite. This is just a pun. Reasonite. Uh, he's a knight that reasons, and reason ends with an N, and a knight begins with an N. If you say it. Uh, this actually originally came from reason night, as in the time of day night, because I was like, what if there was a day where people, like a holiday, where people celebrated reason, and they would call it reason night as one word, which would be a funny pun. But then I was like, what if it was a night? And that's how I got inspired to make this poem. So, yeah, if anybody has any questions, artistic questions about this story, just put the comment and make sure to watch the dramatic reading, which is on my channel. So, yeah, subscribe and bye.